Hello everyone, Catchy383 with Catchy Gaming, and I thought I'd continue with my Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess Manga series, continuing with volume number 3. Now this one is kind of a hefty boy, being noticeably thicker than the other volumes, or at least most of the other volumes. And to be honest, it feels like a lot of filler, like he was just getting some of the more boring parts out of the way, as well as taking some extreme liberties with the story. So it starts off with Link exiting the Forest Temple after defeating Diababa and Ook, the baboon that set his own monkeys on fire with a Gale Boomerang. And I actually managed to get some better images, not of that particular set of pages, but I finally got my scanner to work with Windows 11 since they did some weird thing to make it so scanners don't work. I can't wait for another operating system to come by that isn't trash. So, like Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, it goes way off script in terms of what happens in the game. So, after the Ordon village was attacked, they decided to send the children to a place of safety, particularly that of Hyrule Castle's Castle Town, instead of having them being kidnapped by the Bokoblins and King Bulbin. And by some happy coincidence, they run into Renato, the shaman in Kakariko Village, who tells tales of being attacked by the Bokoblins while out in the middle of Hyrule Field, and also says that Castle Town is not a safe place for the kids, so he takes them to Kakariko Village instead. And then transitions back to Link going through the woods and coming across Koro, the same guy who gives you the lantern in the game, except much later in the manga series, considering you got it before you even entered the Forest Temple. But I guess for whatever reason, they went through the effort of including items and things that Link would use throughout the game into the manga series. This is just like the first instance where it seems like they went way out of their way to make sure he got the lantern in this particular case. And it goes back to the kids being brought to Kakariko Village, and they actually show up being populated in comparison to the game, and probably bigger in scale as well. Now, I'll admit that's a bit of a sticking point for me when it comes to the Legend of Zelda games, particularly pretty much most of the 3D games, outside of maybe a few places like Clock Town or Castle Town in, let's say, Ocarina of Time, or Majora's Mask, or in this case, Twilight Princess, same Castle Town. You don't really see a lot of population in the game, and it feels rather empty. Now, that's easily due to the lack of technology at the time. There's only so much memory and only so many things you can render at once. So I'm not going to blame them or be like, oh, that's unreasonable not to have more of a population in the game. It's fine. It's a product of its time and limitations of some technology from that time. Now, at one point, they found Colin. He was the only kid that got kidnapped along with Ilya. I guess she's not really a kid. But I want to point this frame out just one more time. I meant panel in this case. Particular Mallow. That kid is creepy as hell. Anyways, this is where we come across a bit of an issue with the manga story. See, they crossed into Kakariko Village, but when they transitioned to Link, the black wall's there, so they didn't even notice the black wall, even though they said previously the black wall was gone. So they skipped something somewhere or just forgot that the black wall should have been there to begin with. And it's a bit of a mistake of why they shouldn't have had the children be taken to Kakariko Village via meeting up with the villagers instead of them being kidnapped and escaping or being let go. So I already mentioned how they went out of their way to make sure Link got the lantern. There are times in this manga, like right here, where they go out of their way to make sure they get some elements from the games, such as the gate leading to Kakariko Village that's locked. They even illustrated how Link bypassed said gate, but they couldn't get a simple continuity together in terms of when the kids should have been going into the Twilight realm or shouldn't be in the Twilight realm. I mean, according to the manga, they just walked right in and didn't even notice, even though they said it was gone. Yeah, I'm gonna harp on that. They even have the scene where Link goes into, I guess, the spiritual center of Kakariko Village. I don't know what to call it. And they had that whole entire bit where the kids get scared and Colin's like, Link will save us. And it goes off from there with its own thing. And another sort of obvious bit of reference to the games, they go out of their way to copy the whole entire statues making the howling noise when the wind blows through them. This then leads Link and Minda to follow the glowing golden spirit wolf, who became Minda's friend in the Twilight realm. They don't exactly explain how, but yeah, that's a thing that happened. And the wolf turns into the skeleton, which has been confirmed to be the hero of time from Ocarina of Time, which isn't the only way they try and link the two games together. So after that, it jumps to a panel where Ilya is just in some shack and she finds a kitten that she's trying to save. And I have zero idea if she actually saves said kitten. I'm gonna have to look through the mangas again because I don't remember if she did or didn't. But it's a very anime thing to do. Like I said, this manga is like the animification of the Legend of Zelda series, and having a cat that needs to be taken care of is a very anime thing to do. We then go back to Link training with the hero Time and his own personal hyperbolic time chamber, similar to that of Dragon Ball Z, where time moves slower, but Link still ages. At least that's the explanation for it. Yeah, for the manga. So they have Link actually training to get better instead of just having him be good at fighting. I mean, technically, it's kind of the player learning how to fight in the game. But this is how the manga is just getting around Link just being good. And admittedly, I kind of skipped a huge chunk here where Link kills all the insects, but not as the wolf. He comes out of the hyperbolic time chamber thing and just kills the insects. And the spirit comes back and he gets Epona. So again, they do a few things out of order from the game. When you get Epona, or at least in the manga, King Bulbin decides to attack. Versus when Link actually has to exit Death Mountain because he's getting beat up by the Gorons to go back to Ordon Village in order to get the Iron Boots to do the whole sumo wrestling thing. But the manga just cuts to the fight out in the middle of Hyrule Field, where you take on King Bulbin and all the other goblins. Like I said, this is a lot of filler for this particular volume. And just like the game, it ends on the battle on the bridge, which in the manga, this is the most confusing action scene I've ever tried to figure out what the hell's going on. And that's kind of a common problem with this particular artist. It's kind of very choppy with their action scenes, but it has Link grabbing onto the tusk of his boar and swinging up and taking out King Bulbin. And they altered how Colin, Twilight Prince's favorite punching bag, gets hurt. Instead of pushing Beth out of the way of the oncoming boars, he gets in between her and a bokoblin and gets smacked for it. They even have a very similar, if not the same, scene from the game where Colin's like, I know what it means to be strong like Link. He means brave. And with the end of that, they have a panel where Link's like, okay, I'll go to Death Mountain. So as you can see, there's a lot of liberties that were taken with the story of Twilight Princess, like some major changes. And like I said, I wanted to cover this whole entire series mainly due to the movie coming out next year, and I suspect they might go with one particular story from one of the games, and they're gonna do a lot of creative licensing with it if this is anything to go by, and I'm pretty sure that's what will happen. After all, it's a video game where a lot of what happens between cutscenes is gameplay, which doesn't translate really well to on screen. Anyways, we've made it this far. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.